All right. I do not know if this is live yet. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, we are live. We're super early. I just wanted to get this going, just to make sure that everything is working as expected. I'm gonna put myself on mute for a bit and turn off the camera for the next 8 minutes or so. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. I've got to wrap up a few things. I want to get a glass of water, and then I'll be back. And yes, this is being recorded, so I will be emailing out a recording when this is done. Just note, obviously, if you you cannot ask questions of a recording, so that's the only that's the benefit for the 41 of you so far who are here live. All right, give me a few. I'm going to go get a drink, and I will see you all in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. We can start a bit. We're not going to start early, but I'll start talking early. One thing I want to mention. Yes, Carrie, you're all muted. At the bottom right, you're going to see a little drop down that says to all panelists. Choose all panelists and attendees, because otherwise, like Jim, when you said, hey, everyone, that only went to me. Actually, no, that went to everyone. Jim did it right. But Alancha, when you said hola, that went to just me. So make sure you change that. So Sebastian, definitely do the all panelists and attendees. I wish there was a way on Zoom to make it default, but oh well. Yeah, because otherwise you're kind of talking into a vacuum of just myself and you, which is probably not the goal. Cool. So we've got about 6 minutes. I'm not going to talk too much now about like what we've got agenda wise, because I'll do that when it officially becomes 2 o'clock here on the East Coast of the US. But I'd love to find out, like, I mean, so I'm here in Norfolk, Virginia. We have thunderstorms coming in right now, so I'm crossing my fingers that there won't be any power issues. But I'd love to hear where everyone's from and what do you guys actually tell me. I'd love to hear also. I know some of you, so I know like Robbie, I know I'm guessing from some of these first names who some of you are. I know Des, but I'd love to know not only where you're from, but also what you do primarily. And no, this isn't me trying to segment on the fly. This is me just trying to get an idea of what everyone does and where you live. Cool, lots of people. Awesome. It's a lot of engineers, marketers, developers. I guess developers are engineers too. Very cool. This is so cool. I love seeing this. It's I've been wanting to do this workshop for a while, and I'm gonna give the whole spiel when 2 o'clock rolls around. But this is just awesome seeing. Ballant, 1,200, I believe, have RSVP'd. 85 are live right now. So we'll see. We'll see how many people show up. If you have any last minute friends who want to attend, feel free to give them the link that you clicked on to join. The more the merrier. I'm going to be around as long as I need to be for Q&A. So I know a lot of you are kind of, have probably other things to do. But I'm going to try to make it so I'm going to mix in Q&A during what I cover. And I'm going to surprise you in a few minutes with what I'll be covering. But I'm going to try to dedicate at the end as much time as we need to answering as many questions as you all have for me. Whether it be about ConvertKit, whether it be about email marketing in general, any of the things we talk about like segmentation, personalization, the rabbit hole of tags versus fields, all that good stuff. So I'll be around for that. All right, cool. Now, don't think I'm rude, but I'm going to have this guy, which I'll be looking. I've got my notes here. I'm going to be sharing my screen, which will have kind of the working doc and ConvertKit and everything else. But I'm going to use this for my working notes, so I make sure I cover everything I want to cover. So there's no slides. This isn't like a conference talk. You're going to actually see me walk through and set things up from scratch and reason out loud kind of what I'm doing and everything else. So I think this will be good. I think this will be a lot of fun. So did I spend no, Matt. So no, this is my office. There's actually the one thing I did do behind me, there was a jacket on the floor that I kind of kicked in the corner. But the only other thing I moved, I think, was my eye drops, which were here and there. So yeah, didn't do much cleaning. Although the cleaning person did come yesterday, so I guess yeah. Yeah, it's a nice little attic office. So when I bought the house, this was completely unfurnished and just kind of a storage attic, 100-year-old house. Paid a good amount of money to get the, I don't know if you've seen, if you've seen some of my videos and stuff on YouTube or whatever else, this is usually where I am. Sometimes I use this desk to, I'll have like the camera. I've actually got, if you can see it, that won't work. I've got a Canon C200 camera over here, which I'll sometimes film over here. So, yep. Russell, the first email blast I sent, that would have been probably 2009 or 10. That would have been to the local list we were building with my agency, all local business owner type of people. Oh, volume up. Yeah. Sorry. Am I too low? Is the volume okay? Volume's okay. All right. For the person who said, can I turn up the volume? You turn up your volume. So yeah, I'll be digging in. Hold off on the questions now. There is a Q&A area at the bottom. So I'm going to get lost in this chat. I can just tell you that I'm soloing both the presentation stuff and the Q&A moderation. So use that Q&A option, and that way I can kind of triage all the questions and stuff. But I'm going to be doing I'm going to try to get through live Q&A as we do this. So it is 2:00. I'm going to get started now. I don't want to waste too much time. But let me just welcome first off all of you here. Thanks for coming out. This is new. I haven't done this before. I've done a lot of webinars and stuff like that, but this is not a presentation. I'm not pitching anything at the end. There's no like, this isn't like, you're not going to see a slide deck of like, backstory and all that stuff. What we're going to do instead is I've been talking a lot over the last year and a half or so, specifically about things like how you should segment your email backend and how you should think through your automations and stuff like that. And, if you've followed me on Twitter, you've seen bits and pieces of this stuff where I've kind of tweeted out different things about don't use tags, use custom fields for segmentation, and here's why. But there's only so much I can do on Twitter. So I wanted to do a just kind of a live workshop where I actually have my own agenda with this. Specifically, I'm going to go through, I've done a lot of email marketing stuff on the W your freelancing side, but I have another company called Right Message that is, we're still doing a lot of like, when you get an email from us, it's pretty much a live broadcast email. So we haven't done a lot of what I teach on Right Message. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through conceptually how I'm going to think through, all right, who is the audience? How do I know who they are? How am I going to segment them automatically? How am I going to set up different automations that will communicate with them effectively? How am I going to personalize the content they get from me? So you're going to see all this stuff live. I'm not going to write copy. I'm not going to actually write the emails, but I'll be in ConvertKit in this case, and setting everything up. You'll see me in a Google Doc on one side, which is how I do everything. I'm going to encourage you, regardless of how sophisticated or new your email marketing stuff is, to not use your email marketing app like ConvertKit as the only place that you know what's going on. Because to be frank, ConvertKit's not a great place to find out like how is everything tied together. I'm going to show you how to set up a basically living documentation document for your email setup. This is going to be good for planning if you're still in the early stages, even if you're later on and you're going to be thinking about cleaning some stuff up or kind of adding a bit more complexity to things. I'm going to show you how I use documentation to do all that. So I'm excited about that. I think, as a developer, my background is software development. You would never write a code base without writing tests. So I kind of think of this as, in a way, test-driven development for email marketing. So I'm going to dig into that stuff. If what I just said is over here, doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry about it. That's just insider speak for developers. But I'm going to try to keep this as straightforward and simple as possible. And I'm going to introduce all of this first off by polling the room. And I kind of hinted at this in the email earlier, but I want to hear specifically, somebody said, I refuse to strain to hear you, lack of manners. I think, I'm sorry, I can't do anything else about my volume. I think it's fine. So cool. Yeah, I don't know, KFSUWI. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I don't know what to do. Everyone else's volume is okay. Okay, so I'm going to ignore that. Sorry. So what I want to hear from you all first is specifically, I'd love to hear, what do you think? Well, first off, do you use ConvertKit? And if you don't, what do you use? And nothing yet is a perfectly fine answer. But what do you see the job of email marketing is for you and your business? So that's what I want to hear. One thing I want to mention too, I'm seeing a lot of people talking directly to me. Bottom right of Zoom, if you just joined, when it says to, the default is all panelists, change that to all panelists and attendees. That way it'll go to everyone. Otherwise you're just speaking to me. And yeah. All right, so Terry says in terms of what primary source is strategy and implementation, build a list and communicate with people to automate processes. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second and talk a bit about what I think email marketing really is. And this has evolved over the years for me, this kind of thinking around what exactly the job of email is. So when you think about what the purpose of email marketing is, all it is basically, it's a tool that allows us to communicate with somebody what they should do next and why they should do it. So that could be if you send a newsletter out, what you want them to do next is to read that newsletter. Why you want them to do it is whatever content you have in the email itself that gets them actually reading the thing. That includes the subject, that includes the opening lines, everything that keeps them from archiving or deleting that email. If you're pitching people a product or a service or something, the what is you want them to buy that thing. The why is how you describe it, right? If you want them to complete a survey so you can segment them. The what is you want to collect more information about them so that you can better personalize and communicate with them. The why, which is often missed, is so that they can have a better experience on your email list. So if you think about, just forget about broadcast emails, forget about automations, just think in terms of what's and whys. And this was a big thing that, I'm a technical person by trade. So I tend to think, I geek out on things like automations and sequences and this and that. But until I kind of stepped back and thought, well, what are we really doing? We're basically finding ways that we can individually relate what we have with what somebody's looking for, whether it's free content or a paid product or something. So, that's basically when I think, I don't care about feature sets. I don't care about any of that stuff. I mean, I do, but on a macro level, what I care about is how am I going to communicate best with somebody. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I'm going to show you some fun stuff that I've got set up for you. All right, so I'm going to put a link in the chat, which is to a doc. If I can find the thing to, here we go. So let me put this in the chat real quick. Go here. So hopefully this doc will work for everyone. I've shared this and this should, cool, people are showing it, awesome. All right, so this is the doc we're gonna work out of. So I'm gonna be, I've already put some stuff in here. The rest of it is pretty empty. And this is what I'm gonna use throughout this workshop. I'm gonna fill this out. I'm gonna go through and build this out in real time. And you can kind of get a preview and under the goals section of what we're working toward. But let me just quickly rehash that live. So basically, what we're going to be doing, and I don't care if you are a consultant selling services or you're selling online courses or ebooks or whatever it is you happen to be selling, everything I'm going to be covering is going to be universal, meaning human nature is human nature. It doesn't matter if we're buying a service from somebody or we're buying a product like an online course. The long and short of it is that people want to know, how does this help me? How can this benefit me? What are the risks involved? What are my options and so on? And we're going to use automation in this case to create customers. So if you've been following some of my stuff for a while, you've heard me talk about this idea of a lot of people who are on our email list who come across our free content, whether it be a blog post we've published or a podcast we've appeared on or a guest post we wrote. They might align demographically with the kind of people who we can help, who are our ideal customers. But many of them aren't aware enough, both from a product or problem perspective, to be ready for what we have to offer. So a lot of what we're going to be focusing on today is how do we think through who our audience is, where are they right now, how do they identify, and how can we use automation in a really nice and non-spammy, non-scammy way to give people what it is they're looking for, whether that's, free content that leads to something paid, like a paid service or a paid product. So let me give you the long and quick overview of what we're going to be working toward. All right, so I have a software company called WriteMessage. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're not doing a lot on the email side yet, which is weird. It's kind of a cobbler shoe issue because I've done a ton on W freelancing. I've actually been able to focus the last year and a half, 2 years entirely on writemessage.com without really doing much live on wfreelancing.com. And I've had, frankly, very minimal impacts when it comes to revenue. So revenue's been pretty constant, even though I'm not working day to day in that business. And you might be thinking, all right, here's the passive income, sit on a beach and have a daiquiri kind of idea, pre-COVID. But no, what I really wanted to build was this idea of just because my timeline might have me release an article today, or just because on my timeline, I might be thinking I should launch a product today, that doesn't necessarily align with what my audience needs, what my subscribers need. So I wanted to build a system for W freelancing that would bring people in. So people are coming to the site, people read free content, they opt into something. And I want to bring them to the point of being ready to be a customer, show them what the pros and potentially cons are of becoming a customer, and then automate how people become customers. I sometimes kind of call this the bus problem, where I want to have the business get to the point where if I, God forbid, got hit by a bus or something and went into a coma for a while, that things would kind of continue business as usual. Sure, there wouldn't be any customer support or anything like that, or new products coming to market, but I would want to have continuity. I would want to have the different channels that are sending me new subscribers to work continuously and to give people what they're looking for and to route them to the right thing. And I'm going to be digging into all of this throughout this call. So I'm going to be talking about offer funnels, which compute automatically what should somebody do next with you? What should they buy next from you? So, I wanted that system built, and that's what I've built over the years for W freelancing. I haven't added that yet for WriteMessage. So that's going to be my plan today. And what you see here is my rough notes that I just kind of brain dumped about what it is I want to achieve. And this is going to kind of lead to what we're setting up, which is going to be a way for a new subscriber to come in the door. We intentionally show them what it is we have to offer and why it benefits them, and personally benefits them. So not just globally, but we're going to use personalization to actually show them individually, this is why this matters to you. And then we're going to bring them to what I call the bridge, which is where we kind of bridge the gap between a lot of educational content that's brought them to the point of being ready to work with us, and then presents what we have to offer on a paid basis. We're going to do that. And then, so we're going to automatically pitch people on things. And then after that, for the those who don't accept the pitch, who don't buy in this case, we're going to find out why. And we're going to use that to segment them so we can better understand on a macro level why people are not buying, which is going to be supremely helpful in the future. But also, if I can say, oh, this person didn't buy because it's too expensive, I can then focus more on, for them, on the value argument, whereas somebody else who says they don't have the time, I can focus on more of the prioritization element. So we're going to be, I'm going to walk you through how we structure all this stuff in real time. Then what we're going to do, so when people come through this, we're then going to officially welcome them onto our email list. So they're going to go through this kind of initial gauntlet of educational overload with a specific product that's relevant to them. And then we're going to bring them onto our list in a very official way. And we're going to use this opportunity, or use this as an opportunity, to collect increasingly more relevant data about who they are and what they need from us. And we're going to be using this also to trigger what I call a shadow newsletter, which is a way to basically send out best of content, best of articles with personally appropriate pitches in each of these emails that go out on autopilot that directly point somebody to the next thing in the funnel for them. So in our case with Right Message, if you're on our list, we want you to start a trial. If you've done the trial, we want you to convert. If you are a customer, we want you to upgrade. And if you're already at the top of being an Uber customer, we're going to want you to join our affiliate program or our referral program. So that's going to be what we're going to be kind of setting up at a macro level. When it comes to like other types of business models, so let's say you're selling online courses, or let's say you're selling your own services, same rules apply. Yes, the product is different, but what we're doing is we're trying to meet people where they are now, and we're going to use automation smartly, personalized automation, to show somebody why it is they need to take this next step forward and allow them to self-select rather than trying to impose on somebody that, kind of hard pitch them into a corner and say, buy. It happens to be, what's today? The 30th of April. I think today's a launch day, so I'm going to hammer you with buy emails. Like, that doesn't make sense because people on our list are different. Some people are ready for what we have to offer. Many are not. So if we can use automation to kind of gauge their readiness, then we can use that to our advantage and their advantage by giving them what they need when they need it. There's this thing that you see, I think it even says it on ConvertKit's marketing site. You see this a lot, send the right message to the right person at the right time. Practically speaking, very few people can actually answer how they go about doing that. Everyone says they do that, but the majority of people, what they're doing is they're just sending like these broadcast emails every once in a while. Maybe they're personalizing by putting somebody's first name at the top of that email, but really doing much beyond that. Yeah, maybe they're ignoring people who've already bought the product from future pitches and so on and so forth. But what I want to try to help you do through this, and I know this is you're not going to be able to implement this overnight, but I'm hoping that I'm going to plant the right seeds that over the next few weeks and months, especially if we're all stuck inside for a while, you're going to be able to build out a really robust system, a really strong asset that will allow you to, like we've been talking about, get the right people in the door, show them what you've got, show them why it matters to them, and then present them with that next step forward. I like to chat now to see if this is all making sense for people. Any questions so far? Let me just, cool, awesome. Okay, good. Cool. All right, so we talked about the coma problem, the bus problem, or whatever you want to call it. All right, so I want to start with segmentation. So, segmentation is one of these things that I think is very much underutilized, and also let me turn the air conditioning on real quick. I'm sorry, a second. Okay, that should turn on. Segmentation is one of these things where we kind of can't do much of anything outside of one size fits all unless we are segmenting. You know, a lot of us, we think we want to personalize content. We want to send more personal emails, which is fine. If you've got a very niche list and a very niche offering, you're automatically going to be very hard hitting with your content you send. Because, you know, if you've got a list of people who are going to make up something on the spot, that's going to be stupid. But let's say goat farmers who want to become astronauts, like that's a very small, well-positioned list you would have, right? Most of us aren't like that. We've got if you think about it, we've got a kind of a wide variety of people who have different reasons for being on our list and have different identities. So that's what I want to start with here, which is how do we go through and think about the different types of people who are on our list? So I start with the who and the what, or the who and the why. So for a right message, one of the things that we've done, and this is one thing I would encourage you to do, we're still collecting the data, but I want to show you how I did this more recently when I launched the ConvertKit course last year. So I am a big fan of letting potential customers write sales copy and write content for me. Maybe it's the typical programmer laziness thing, but I really like the idea of basically having people tell me exactly what it is they're looking for and what they need help with, and then I can use that to better relate what I've got to them in the future. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, if you have an email list already, you send a simple email to your list that says something like, hey, I'm working on some new content over the next few months, and I want to make sure I'm giving you exactly what you need and nothing more. Could you reply with a sentence or two about, one, what kind of business you run, and two, why you're looking, what's the number one thing you're struggling with when it comes to email marketing? So very simple thing. This could be a dedicated email, or it could be in the PS of a future email or future series of emails that you send. There we go. But basically what we're looking for here is we're looking for raw voice of customer data. So I have a customer of Right Message who did this with their list. They've got 80,000 people on their list. He got overwhelmed with the responses. But what was so cool about this, which is what I love about this, is he learned not only so much about his audience in their own words, but he was able to put together a spreadsheet like this. So this is my spreadsheet where what I did is I just emailed people on my early access list and said, hey, you know, tell me a bit about why you're on my list and what you're looking for. And this is what I got back. So what I ended up doing is I opened up an empty spreadsheet and I kind of mapped out the, you know, why are you here? Why aren't you using marketing? And tried to figure out at a very high level, what are the different things people are telling me in their own words about why they ended up opting in for the early access for the course. So why are you here? I got a bunch of responses. Each of these lines is a snippet from one of these responses. And what I did is I just went through response by response. First off, I acknowledge, thank them for letting me know and all that stuff. But I would say, well, is this something that can fit cleanly into one of these big picture, high level segments? Or is this something that is totally new? And if it was very new, I would add a new column and I'd call it like model off something successful or generate leads or more personal marketing and so on. And what I was able to do was I was able to capture a list of voice of customer data. So these are people who are intimidated by ConvertKit. I could do so much more if I could only set up and unleash ConvertKit. I love the tool. It's fun to use, but I want to excel at it. I currently use MailChimp but exclusively, but honestly, the complexity of automated campaigns has kept me, you know, all these different things in their own words that I've been able to correlate into these specific discrete groups. So, you know, when you think about, you know, I know a lot of you are kind of still starting out with email marketing. So some of this might be gut level assumptions at this point, and that's fine because, you know, I think a lot of us get put off by the fact that either you have email marketing or you don't. And what is easy to miss is how many of us just kind of trial and error our way to getting to where we are now. So like, my goal here is to help you avoid some of these proverbial mistakes that many of us make. That's what I'm going to dig deep into why you shouldn't tag for segmentation. I'm going to talk about naming conventions just so you can knock it to the point where, I've seen so many people's email marketing accounts that it's a bit of a kind of a nightmare situation. It's like this cluttered attic of stuff, and people are just confused about what's going on and how this data gets applied and what they're doing with it and if it's even being used. And I was working with one person the other day where I went to their tag list and it actually caused Chrome to crash because so much stuff was there. So, I want to help you first off, not fall into that trap. But I want to kind of lay out a kind of a prescriptive thing that I think most of us should be doing. And that thing starts with segmentation. So, by email, sending a simple email like this to your email list and getting raw responses and putting them in here, look at what I'm able to do with this. If somebody in the future has told me that they want to model their ConvertKit setup off something successful, can you see how, as I expand this list, how this can directly drive every marketing email I send about the product, or even the sales page where somebody has told me, hey, I want to model my ConvertKit setup off someone successful. Can you see why for them, if I talk to them as like these people talk in this column versus somebody who is intimidated by ConvertKit, can you see how much more relevant and effective that would be for them? So when I talk personalization, you're going to hear me talk a lot about personalization. I'm not talking about putting people's names in. I'm not talking about telling people what they already know. Instead, I'm talking about, hands being raised. That's interesting. How does that work? Instead, I don't even know where the hand raised thing is. Dan, can you let me know in the chat what everyone's raising their hand. What does that mean? Oh, this document. I'm sorry. Yes. So sorry. All right, there you go. Sorry about that, everyone. I was like, what are all these hand raising things? Let me know if that link works for everyone. I've actually got it here. Let me make sure that's the correct thing. I'll share that again. Oh, that's all panelists. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, there. Let me know if that link works as expected. Cool. People are showing up. Awesome. Sorry about that. Thanks. Yeah. If I'm saying anything and you guys are getting lost, use that hand wave or hand thing again. Thank you. Cool. All right. So this is an example spreadsheet, by the way. So I don't have all of it in here, but I did map out like what kind of a shell that you can copy and modify for your own purposes. But what I was getting at is personalization is so effective. It's effective because what it allows you to do is it allows you to use voice of customer data, namely what people have told you directly, their actual pain points, their actual needs, and use that in a way where when you respond to people like that in the future, you can say, hey, I get what you need. I know you love the tool. I know you want to excel at it. I know you want to unleash ConvertKit. I know you want to become more pro at automations and make your life way freaking easier through ConvertKit. By you curating content, by you curating language, first off, it makes your job as a writer, as a content writer, a lot easier, first off, I think. Secondly, though, you're showing people that you do understand them. So we're going to start with this segmentation stuff. So that's what we're going to start with. So with Right Message, we've been doing this, like I mentioned, and I can actually show you real quick what we've got on a big level, on a high level. So we've been doing a lot of segmentation ourselves, which makes sense. But you can see here, like we've been able to capture data around like what their goal is with joining our email course, or what email service provider they're currently using. Here, 26% are using ConvertKit. Whether they're satisfied with list growth, whether they, what their list growth number is. And we've collected all this data on a high level, but what this picture is missing is all the raw data associated with this. So what led us to the point of being able to confidently say, these are the 4 things that people are joining this email course for, was before we ever listed these 4 things in a pick one kind of way. Instead, what we did was we emailed our list and said, hey, if we put together an email course on website personalization, what is it you need this to do for you? And we went through, just like you saw here, a lot of raw response data. And we were able to come up with these 4 different things that are the 4 main reasons people join. And then we can use this data to react. So when we talk about why somebody should use Right Message, if they want to convert more leads into new customers, that is so much different than somebody who wants to increase customer lifetime value. And yes, it's maybe a small percentage of people who want to do that, but that's the kind of thing that, I think the big mistake that I want to really just address again and again is people who think personalization is putting names in an email. What frustrates me is a new broadcast here, and I go to do the little personalized thing. It's basically sticking in data that is known, right? Like personalized. I don't consider this to be personalization. This is mail merging. This is like just injecting data that we already know about somebody, that they already know. So I'm going to encourage you throughout this whole thing to be thinking more about how can we take what people are telling us. Ooh, click to annotate. Sorry about that. How can we take what people are telling us right here and use this to better relate what it is we've got? That's all email marketing is about. What you want them to do next. I want them to sign up for a trial of Right Message. Why they should do it. Because if they are looking to generate more leads, this is going to help them in X, Y, and Z way. If they're looking to make it so they're able to sell more to existing subscribers, it's going to help them in this way. And that's what I want all of you to be thinking through if you haven't done that yet, is what are the different types of needs? So I break it down into the who and the why. Very simply start with one. What is one common kind of identity that people have? It could be, in our case, what email service provider they use, ConvertKit, Infusionsoft, whatever. What kind of business they run. Is it retail? Or I should say, is it e-commerce, consulting company, software company? And why are they here? They're struggling with generating leads. They're struggling with converting leads. They're struggling with getting existing leads, or existing customers, I should say, to buy other stuff. So that's what I want to be, all of you to be thinking about. I think, Rachel, you just raised your hand. Go ahead. I'm looking at the chat window now. And when you raise your hand, if you would, just throw something in the chat so I can see what you need help with. All right, I'm going to keep going then. Rachel, go ahead and ask what you want to ask, if you don't mind. And use the Q&A, by the way, for things where if like later on, like if you've got miscellaneous questions, but if it's something I'm talking about right now, raise your hand, throw it in the chat. I'm happy to stop and address it. All right, so okay, so we want to find out who people are and what they need, right? That's going to allow us to send very specific, in this case, very specific lesson emails. So let's go and kind of map this out. So I like to, I'm going to talk in a second about how we segment. But one thing I like to do is I like to, in this document, I like to map out exactly what am I segmenting, like the internal name. How do I track that data? What does this do? What are the options? And how does this segmentation get set? And how is the segmentation used? If you set something like this up for every point of segmentation that you have, you are going to make your life so much easier. And the reason why is I have gone in, and I've been guilty of this myself, where I've like thought, oh, I don't need this, tag or field any longer, or I don't know what this does, or you end up doing something, and then you have like duplicate tags or duplicate fields, or the wrong field values, and it just becomes really messy. And that's why I think, like, generally speaking, a tool like ConvertKit is not really good at communicating this, like where is this being used and how's it getting set. So what I like to do is I like to make sure I document everything about these are the different segments I'm tracking, and this is how they get set. So let's talk about what we want to track. So I wanted to track what the email service provider, somebody, or I'm going to start with the business types. Somebody's business type. I'm not going to bother with, I mean, I'll do this. What kind of business they run. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think through what are the different options. So if it's blank, they haven't told me. If it's e-commerce, yeah, then they run e-commerce company. One thing I can't stand is how it auto capitalizes. Software, then they run a software company. So what you want to do is you just want to kind of map out all the different things that this field can be set to. So I want to stop here and I want to get on my soapbox again and just talk about, what I'm doing here is, you can probably see, is these are custom fields. These are not tags. A lot of people, including the higher ups at ConvertKit, when they talk about segmentation, they talk about tags. If you go to the blank onboarding for ConvertKit, organize your subscribers with tags. So why am I not a fan generally of tags? I'm going to try to make a really compelling case, and I'm please feel free to push back. I'm going to, I don't want to ever think that I've got all the answers, but I do think that I've run into a lot of situations where tagging falls short, and I want to just detail that really quickly now. So, okay, so let's say we wanted to track with right message what kind of customer somebody is. So let's say that we think, all right, if somebody signs up for a trial, we're going to tag them with trial. And then when their trial ends, if they stay, we're going to then tag them as customer. And then let's say they cancel 2 months later, we're going to then tag them as canceled, right? So this is kind of a very common pattern people use. And people use this for things like interest tagging. So like click which of these colors you like best. Is it red, green, or blue? You click red, it applies a red tag. Here's the big issue. Let's say practically speaking, you want to email every one of your customers who is canceled. So what you would do typically is you'd go and you'd say, all right, I'm going to go and create a broadcast. Let me just create a tag real quick, call it canceled. So I'm going to create a broadcast, and in this broadcast, I'm going to target everyone who is subscribed to the tag of cancel, right? So this is what you do. This is what, you look at the ConvertKit documentation, they're going to tell you to do this. Here's my issue with this. Well, what if they canceled and then a few weeks later they come back? Well, so they go and they sign up again. They start a new trial, or they become a customer again. The issue is now you need to be thinking, all right, so if they sign up, we need to make sure if the cancel tag exists, that it goes away, that we remove it. So you end up with all these weird automation rules that are saying, like, if somebody signs up for a trial, remove the customer tag if it's there because they're not a customer, remove the cancel tag if it's there because they're obviously no longer canceled. And you end up with all these cleanup things. Like, let's say you ask somebody in an email, what's your favorite color, red, green, or blue? If they click red and then they click green because they can, it's all as link triggers in an email. Well, which one are they? Do they like red or do they like green? And I see this so often. And this is where kind of email automation or email marketing setups go off the rails, because people will do this and then they want to go and they email everyone who's canceled with a promo. And then people are like, I'm actually a customer. Why am I getting this? Right. So why I like fields for either like state segmentation. So that is, you go from being an email list subscriber to a trial customer, to a paying customer, to a canceled customer. That's what I call state-based or state machine-based. And one of many. So what's your favorite color? What's your favorite kind of food? I use fields for that because fields cannot have more than one answer. Because what happens is if we're using a field like business type, if that goes from e-commerce to software, any history of e-commerce is now gone. We don't need to worry about talking to them as an e-commerce company. Let's say they accidentally click the wrong profiling link. They clicked e-commerce and they're like, oh no, crap, I meant to click software. Well, now you've got, with tags, you would have both. And with this, it's whatever the last one they clicked is. So there are general uses for tags. That is many of many things. So like, it's the difference between what kind of food do you like versus what is your favorite food. Now I'll tell you, if you position things when you segment your list as what kind of food do you like, I'd be asking yourself, does it help you at all to know that? Because like, what is your biggest business need? Pick one of these, pick whatever these 4 things you're struggling with. Well, they choose all of them. What do? Do you either subscribe them on a ton of automated sequences that quadruple up daily emails, or do you, how do you actually effectively personalize for that? Because you don't really know what the number one thing that they're struggling with is, which you can then use if you knew that number one to say, if it's this, show this paragraph of text. If it's that, show that paragraph of text. So I think, tags are fine if you want to do many of many, and there's a legitimate reason for doing that. So what products have somebody bought, right? If you don't have like a trial or whatever kind of status type thing, if it's just either they bought the thing or they haven't, tags are fine. Or, truly binary things like I'm going to be talking about locked statuses. So if they're currently going through a pitch right now and you don't want to pitch them in any other way, that could be a tag. That could be either an on or off thing. So, but generally speaking, we don't want to be using tags for segmentation. I've seen a lot of activities. I'm going to stop for a second and see what people are talking about. So Jason, the issue though, my biggest issue though is that yes, you can use for many, by all means use tags, but practically speaking, that is let's say you want to personalize an email, that is going to be a mess of insane liquid to not double up on the wrong info. That just makes the message come out weird. I think most people generally do want what we are looking for one of many, but you could slide towards many of many, and then it becomes just this kind of nightmare situation. Okay, let me. So let me see if there's anything else. All right, so yeah, I mean, a lot of John, your question about Infusionsoft. Yeah, I mean, ConvertKit uses tags as their primary method of segmentation too. It's one of these things you can generally work against or work around, I should say. I think there are some limitations I've seen with Infusionsoft where you can't trigger a campaign based on a custom field being changed. That would be the only thing there that would cause that to be a bit of a issue. So, yeah. So, like Jason said, if you've got membership stuff where, like obviously the example that I use is I want to send an email to people who have bought this A or B, that you can safely belong to A or B. So for something like that, I would use probably tags. Sometimes I'm actually now switching to comma separated list for that. It does make it more complex, but it makes me happier. All right. So if that, let me show you how to do custom fields. I'm going to dive now into ConvertKit actually. So I need to add a subscriber. I'm going to add myself, Brennan at doubleyourfreelancing.com. Unfortunately, it requires me to have, you can't add a subscriber in ConvertKit through their front end without sticking it into a form, sequence, or tag. So I'm going to just assume they came in through the newsletter. All right, so to add a custom field, you need to actually go to any subscriber in your database. And then on the left side, you'll see a list of custom fields. The defaults are email and first name, but then you can add for field names here. One thing I'm going to recommend is don't do this. Don't do like favorite color. You can do this. You safely can, and there are ways to access this. But you're probably going to, at some point in the future, use liquid templating to reference this. So I tend to think underline or underscores instead of spaces, all lowercase. This is internal data. So treat it like this. And ConvertKit, you'll see in a second when I click update, it's going to actually make it, it'll look fine. It's just all caps and stuff, right? But basically all you need to do is, let's say we want to track, in this case, I'm going to want to track business type. So go to any subscriber, leave the field value blank, and just click update subscriber. And now you have this business type segment. So the next question is probably going to be, well, how do we find everyone who's in a certain business type? So I'm going to call this, let's say that Brennan is in software, right? And his favorite color is red. I'm going to update that. So unfortunately, if you go to the dashboard, you can't quickly jump to everyone who likes red or everyone who's in software. So this is where we're going to use ConvertKit's built-in, what they call segments, which are really just saved searches to accommodate this. So if I click create segment, I'm going to say, favorite color is red. So my naming convention is the thing, the segment name, which is going to track with what I have over here. Oh, shoot, I just clicked something. Which is going to track here. So business type. I try to get everything to always match, because if they're matching, then you're safe. You know what you've got is correct. So I'm just going to call this business type. And then we have software as an option, right? Which is going to be that. So to do this, I'm going to go and say, if somebody's custom field of business type equals software, add filter, there's the one. Now I save that. Now on my dashboard, I've got business type equals software. So I just click that and it'll only show me people who match that. So what you're going to have at the end of the day is very few things under tags, but a lot of things under segments that are quick references to all the different combinations you have. So you'll have one for e-commerce, business type : e-commerce, business type consultant, business type, whatever the different things that you're tracking are. Is this making sense so far? How implementation wise, how this is all working? I think Gabrielle, you wanted me to, cool. All right. So cool. Awesome. Yeah. Shout out if I'm, yeah, it would be. The good thing is if you're, Jason, I think if you're doing most things with custom fields anyway, then you don't need to really, like if your segments are really just saved representations of people with a certain custom field set to a certain value, then you can actually still, because Liquid can only reference tags in custom fields, right? So I actually don't really I try not to use segments outside of it being a shortcut to a certain custom field value. All right, so let me see what everyone's saying. All right, any suggestion what to make the first 3 custom fields? I know based on customer type. Yeah, all right, so let's talk about it. I'm going to get into that, Joe, actually, about I'm going to talk about all the different things. You're going to see this custom fields list build out over time. My minimums are newsletter status, which is either blank, meaning they're not on your newsletter, active, subscriber, or unsubscribed, which is somebody who's asked to not be on your newsletter, and then a who, so what kind of business they run, and a what or why, which is why are they here. That'll give you the 3 minimum kind of core segments that you'll need. Neville asked, how do you handle someone going to your website and filling out a form or taking some action that implies that they're in segment A, but then later taking some other action that would make them segment B? All right, so that, let me actually, I'm going to defer that, Neville, just because I'm going to be talking about behavioral and survey-based in a second. So give me like 5 minutes and I'll hopefully cover that. All right, so what we've talked about so far are survey-based ways of segmenting people. So what we're looking at is we're going to be asking people point blank, what kind of business do you run? And what is the thing you're struggling with most often? And we're going to use that to dictate how an email course and ultimately a pitch for a product should play out. So what I'd be doing now in ConvertKit would be thinking about, all right, so what is the, let me actually go and clean this up real quick. I'm going to get rid of favorite color because that's just a joke. I'm going to click add new field. So newsletter status. So as I add stuff here, you're going to want to go, or as you add stuff to your doc on your fields list, you're going to want to sync that into ConvertKit. So we have newsletter status and business type here. And then I'm going to add one more, which is the why. So maybe we'll call this email course need. So I'll just quickly copy that out. And hopefully you're seeing why having this in because it becomes cumbersome to figure out what are the different options for business type. Because if I accidentally typed in softwares or e-com, and then some people are e-commerce, then you have e-com, it becomes a nightmare situation because you end up having two different values that really represent the same segment. So if you only do stuff starting in a Google Doc and then track what are the values here, you run no risk of having, like, let's say you're in an email and you say, if subscriber.business type equals ecom, show blah, blah, blah. But then you've got everyone on your list who's e-commerce. That's going to break that email. So I really encourage everyone to have this kind of master doc that you're working with. All right, so we're going to call this, email course need. And I'm not going to fill this stuff in. I'll fill it out later, like the applied and used. But basically, blank haven't told me. They're looking to more leads, more conversions, and more upsells, let's say. I'll just blank this stuff out. I'm not going to waste your time having you watch me type stuff. That's obvious. All right, so once you've done this, now we want to be thinking, all right, so we have a preliminary version 0.1 segmentation strategy where what we're doing is we're going to try to come up with, in this case, who somebody is and what they need. So how do we get that data? So what I'm going to encourage you to do is at the point of opting in, you're going to want to collect this data so that you can basically start to immediately personalize the sequence that you put them in immediately. So I'm going to be talking, as I said above, about this idea of a L-BPS sequence, which is a lessons, bridge, pitch, survey sequence that actually, funny enough, I've been using that language for years, but then I was hosting basically this, but privately with Pat Flynn and the SPI team a few months ago. And Pat was like, it's called an L-BPS. People have acronyms. So L-BPS is what it's called now. Basically, that's what we talked about earlier, which is going to be our primary asset, our primary intake channel for somebody joining our list. So I know that a lot of us probably default to like a newsletter often. So, join my newsletter and you'll get content whenever I happen to send it to you. Long term, again, I don't expect you to do this anytime soon, if you don't have it yet, especially. You're going to want to come up with a free asset that you can sell in exchange for email addresses. So that would be like if you go to the wrong site. If you go to the right message site, you'll see what we do is we ask people what kind of business do they run. So they choose, software, ready to increase your. So this is basically our primary thing, which is this 7-lesson course, email course. That is our main way of getting people onto our list. So I'd highly encourage you to be thinking about how to do that. If you want an article on that, that is very in depth. I wrote this for Ramit Sethi's site. I'll link that in here. This is a 9,000 word article that I wrote about kind of how to go about thinking about writing an email course. I talk about personalization and stuff. So I'm not going to rehash too much about the actual setting this up because that article is going to do a much better job of it than I would on the fly here. But basically, at the end of the day, we want to have a thing that we can offer people when they visit our site or see us give a talk on a stage or hear us on a podcast interview, where we can say the next step for you. Remember, the what should they do and why should they do it? Keep thinking about that. The next step after reading this article about X, Y, and Z is this 7-lesson email course that we put together that will help you better personalize to your email list or whatever. So this is our primary intake. So now what I would do next would be thinking, all right, so our ingress. So the next stage or section, I should say, of this document is how do people get onto your email list? So, in our case, it's this 7-lesson email course, L-BPS, right? It's also if they start a trial, then that will put them into our email database. Maybe you have just a generic newsletter opt-in that's buried in your footer that you allow people on. But basically, you should be mapping out any possible way that somebody can get onto your email list. And this is huge because I've seen so many people that I've worked with who they really, especially when they deal with these third-party form tools or they do Zapier to integrate with Teachable or any number of different tools, people kind of pop into their email database and they're not really sure how they got there. And ConvertKit will show you if they submitted a form, but they won't say this came from a Zapier API call or anything like that. So you do want to map out your ingress points. So basically the ways that people get onto your list. So for us, I'm just going to start with these 2 ways, which is the 7-lesson email course, which is site-wide, and it segments off of business type. And what's great about Google Forms or Google Docs is I can link and say, actually, this should link over to the custom forms area or custom fields area. So you can click this and you can go and find out all the different business type stuff that you're tracking there. And the goal here is to convert anonymous visitors, drive-bys, into email subscribers, right? So I map this out. This correlates directly to an actual form in ConvertKit. So I've already created that. I don't use actual ConvertKit forms, but I do map things to it all the time. I do map, like we use write message. So I map write message when a lead is generated directly to a ConvertKit form. So we get all that tracking stuff. But then again, I can just link this text here and link it directly to ConvertKit. So as this doc gets started to be built out, you end up having a lot of really nice references within your ConvertKit account that you can quickly and easily jump around to. So let me just make this heading 3.2. So you're going to be able to see how over time this is going to be built out into something pretty sophisticated. So cool. Yes, there will be recording. Talal sent out to you. All right. So where are we? So we've thought about, we've gone in through and we've thought through all the different segmentation things that we want to start with, which is going to be business type and why did they join the email course, which you're going to use a spreadsheet to kind of distill all that down, or make your best guess. Now we've figured out how people get into that. So, they're going to join a 7-lesson email course, and that's going to be the form that they submit. And that's going to trigger off all the automation that brings them in and delivers the lessons, delivers the bridge sequence, delivers the automated pitch, and then delivers the surveying. So what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm kind of building this out on the fly, is I'm going to create an automation that's going to be the container for all of that. So within ConvertKit, I'm going to click Create Automation. I'm going to call this L-BPS email course, and then container. So my naming format is what it is this is doing. So L-BPS, this is a lesson bridge pitch survey sequence. I also have functions, which are workflows or automations, which don't actually send emails, but instead they're computing things. Like I'm going to show you in a second an offer funnel, which is a way to compute out like what should somebody do next. So, I'm going to create a container and then I'm going to map it. So when they submit the form here, you can see how I'm using this L-BPS here. I want to kind of I want to make it really simple for me to know exactly what this automation does, why it does its thing, which I'm going to do in a second over here in the workflows area. So I just find it really helpful to have a really good naming convention because I've been in behind the scenes of a lot of accounts, and it's often a kind of a hot mess of randomly named things that don't make much sense. Gabrielle, yes, I do actually use custom fields to track. So if the initial came from Facebook as the initial referrer or any of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, there's no way to do that natively with ConvertKit. We do it with write message, but you could also do it with some custom JavaScript that would basically, on the initial time you see somebody on your site, you basically drop a cookie or something that's the initial referrer. And then whenever they opt in, you basically populate a hidden field on that form with like initial refer or something. So that's how you would do it. Cool. All right. So let's think. All right. So what do we want to do now? We want to kind of map out what this workflow should do. So before you do anything in ConvertKit, what I recommend you do is to kind of workflow it out or bullet point it out, I should say, entirely in Google Docs. So this is I'm just going to copy the name of this right here. I'm going to make that my heading 3, and I'm going to link directly to this. All right. So trigger, which is how does this start? ConvertKit allows for up to 5 different triggers for an automation. I believe it's 5, might be 4. But you can actually go beyond that if you use an automation rule. And then you can have what I call flag tags, which are just basically tags that are meant solely for the purpose of causing an event to occur. I'm not going to dig too deep into this stuff just yet. But if you have questions about it, or it might actually come up as we move further through this workshop, conceptually what I mean by that. But for right now, don't worry about it, because right now there's only one way to get into this email course, which is by submitting that form. So the trigger is going to be the L-BPS personalization email course form. All right. And then what do we want to have happen? So we want this to deliver the 7 lesson email sequence. We then want to determine if they are not a customer, then we want to deliver the bridge sequence, which is going to be the emails that I've mapped out above on summing up kind of what we covered, offer kind of the multiple ways that they could do this. They could either code this themselves, or they can do the shortcut, which is we've built software that does this, delivers specific case studies or personalized case studies that relate to their industry or the kind of work they do, the business type. So let me go back here. So the trigger is this, delivers that. If they're not a customer, deliver the bridge sequence, deliver the pitch sequence, and then deliver the survey sequence, with the goal of this, or the event, which is called in ConvertKit, is to sign up for a migration. So what we're doing is I'm basically just kind of using what's called pseudocode to spec out exactly what happens here. And this is really simple if you think about it. All we're doing is we're delivering a 7 lesson sequence of emails, and then we're going to do a check to say, hey, are they already a customer or not? And if they are not, then we're going to push them through this. So let's model that out real quick. So I'm just going to say, action is deliver an email sequence. I'm going to call this L-BPS email course lessons. So what I like to do naming wise is to mirror what I'm doing up here. So L-BPS email course, but this is the lessons sequence. So that'll send out the sequence of emails for these lessons. We're going to add a condition. We're going to check to see if I need to add that custom field. So let me go do that real quick. So now we're going to add a new custom field. So this is, again, where we start to do this stuff. We're just kind of progressively adding to this document. So we want to track somebody's customer status. So where they are as a customer. I'm going to call this customer status. Determine what kind of customer they are. Okay, so if it's blank, they haven't done anything. They've never started a trial. They're just on our email list. So never done a trial, etc. If it's trialing, they are going through 14-day trial. If it's I'm going to put here the CTA monthly, which means they're a monthly customer of our CTA plan. Customer CTA plan, then the personalized monthly. So you can see just how I'm mapping all this stuff out. Monthly personalized plan. And then the canceled. I'd probably call it churned actually, but same deal. Churned their account. Cool. All right. So this is going to be the possible values of this field. Now I just need to jump out of here and go to any subscriber. And then I'm just going to quickly add a customer status field, leave it blank, update, and jump back into the automation that we had going on. So now I can say if the custom field of customer status. So what do we want to do here? Do we want this to go out? Do we want people to be pitched even if they've canceled? Or do we just want it to be if it's blank? So I would say, in this case, I just want to target people if they're blank. So basically, if they haven't, if they've never done a trial, they've never done any of that stuff, I'm just going to do it for them. So if it's blank, if that's true, that means these people are going to be the eligible ones to get pitched. So here's where I'm going to just add now my next L-BPS email course bridge. And all these are our sequences, really simple. I'm not going to walk through how to use the sequence editor. But basically it's just you're just going to map out the different email threads that you want to send out to people. So we're going to do our email course bridge, and then we're going to do our L-BPS email course pitch, and then we'll do the survey. But is this so far making sense? How just Gabrielle asks, is it possible for you to have a month? No. So you can't, yeah, so good question. So Gabrielle, you can't, with Right Message at least, you can only be in one of these plans at a time. So yeah, it would only be one of those. So the ideal path is people start on CTA and then they move up to monthly. So in our funnel, this is what we want to have happen. Okay, so, and then finally, the event that we want people to get to is when the custom field of customer status changes to trialing. So that's how easy this is. So now they're going to be pulled up. So this event right here will pull people forward on this path. If the customer status changes to trialing, you can only become one of these by going to trialing first. So I don't need to worry about, well, can they jump directly to CTA monthly? No, everyone starts at the trial. So I don't need to worry about that here. So yeah, I mean, that's basically how I mapped that out. And that's how that mirrors what I just mapped out. Actually sign up for a trial here. That just maps out, that mirrors this. So I really find it so much easier. I don't know about you, and let me know if you find this easier to just bullet point stuff. Just dump it in a doc and just kind of do like, if they are, then indent and do whatever. I find that just really, really a lot more simple than starting and going headfirst into ConvertKit. Yeah, let me know if that, if you think the same. So Tomas asks, if you send out surveys to your list for additional information, you use the Right Message for that also. Yeah, we do. So let me actually show you what we're doing. So remember how that email, the email course that I showed you here. So let me actually show you, I keep on the wrong site. Let me show you what we're doing technically. So if they choose software, and then I'm going to do Brennan, me, software company at brennandunn.com. What I'm doing here is, so check this out. So this is the confirmation page. I'm going to actually go into my ConvertKit account real quick. Let me just find, where is it? Where the hell did the subscribers? Oh, here it is. All right, the software. Oh, wait, this isn't Drip. I'm sorry, wrong tool. Let me go to my Drip account, which is basically the same thing. So don't worry that this isn't ConvertKit. It's basically the wrong. Apologies for the delay. All right, so here's the, you just find the software. What did I just call? What did I name the, I called it this, right? There might be a bit of a delay sometimes with getting Drip to, anyway, I won't show this to you now. There's sometimes a bit of a delay with Drip's API, but basically what I do is on the confirmation page, I have this follow-up survey that as they answer like, oh, I use Sumo right now. I am happy. I am not personalizing. Not so basically what's happening is as they answer this questions, that's getting piped up to, in this case, Drip, but we're going to be moving off of Drip soon. That's getting piped up, and then all that's getting set immediately in real time as custom fields. So yeah, to answer your question, that's we're using whether it be ConvertKit or Drip or whatever as the single source of truth, where we're kind of treating it as like a users table. Every contact is a user, and in that, if you map it to like a spreadsheet, like, you know, if this is your say these are your contacts, right? You've got email, you've got first name, you've got, you know, business type. I'm just treating it like a giant spreadsheet where we're just updating this stuff. And again, this is why I wouldn't use tags, because, you know, like likes red, likes green, likes blue. to me, these are like tags, right? Like, you know, yes or no, right? Like, or I should say favorite red, favorite green, favorite blue, right? So you'd never do this in a spreadsheet. No, you would have a favorite color and then it would say green here, right? Like this is how you would do things. You wouldn't do it this way, which is why I'm an advocate for one of many type things or state machine things to be using custom fields. Because I think of ConvertKit records as spreadsheet rows. And yeah, so I'm what you just saw there was me populating that data. But I do things like, let me see if I can find that workshop. I think actually if you saw the, what did I call this survey? I called it something. I need a, here it is. I think this is actually, yeah. So this is actually what I did when you might have actually seen this, actually, a lot of you, where when you registered for this event, you went here, right? So what was happening behind the scenes was all that data that I showed you of those charts and everything, that all, like when you did this, got sent to your record in my ConvertKit database. Okay, I'm going to take a few moments for looking through some of the questions you guys are asking. So keep asking. This is awesome. And again, I'm sorry if this is the first time I've ever done this and I have a loose agenda, but it's obviously not nearly as structured as it probably could have been. But hopefully just seeing my thought process and hearing me talk out loud has been helpful. So the bridge sequence, Elsa, if you read that, I'm going to ask you to read that Growth Lab article that I linked in the chat. That goes more into depth about this, but basically it's the idea of bridging an educational email course with a promotion or a pitch. So instead of going straight from education to buy my thing, it's kind of like a period where you're aligning what they just learned and summing it up with what's to come and giving them what I call this like long road versus shortcut choice of, you know, the shortcut in our email course's case, the one I've been describing today, is the shortcut is right message. The long road is hire a developer. Good luck getting your site to integrate with your email marketing apps API. Good luck maintaining that. Have fun with getting this developer to do X, Y, and Z. You're going to spend a lot of money on development costs. So we're giving them the, you know, if what we just taught in this email course is making a lot of sense to you, and this is what you want to implement. So we're using it to create a customer. So we're getting people who don't know that any of this stuff is even possible. We get them to the end of that. And then we say, if this is all resonating with you, if the examples we're giving, if all this stuff is making sense, you have two options. You can either go at it alone and kind of build the stuff from scratch because, you know, like the tool, they use Sumo. Sumo is not going to do this for you. They use Thrive. Thrive isn't going to do this for you. That's how we're personalizing this stuff. And then we're presenting them with the shortcut versus the long road. And the shortcut is obviously, in our case, right message. So the bridge is just the way of linking the two together. Yeah, I mean, so Mike brings up a very valid point that they can get out of sync easily. And this is the programmer background in me kind of thinking where tests can get out of date with a code base. So it's up to you as the person commanding this whole setup to be diligent about the fact that if I'm going to change something in one place, it needs to reflect in the other place. And more importantly, if I'm going to mess with something in ConvertKit, I go in here and look at things like, well, all right, so how is this field, where is it being used? It's being used in this template, this email template. It's being used in this automation. There's a check looking for is newsletter status equal to active. If you're linking directly to ConvertKit from this doc, it becomes really easy because you can see like, all right, I want to do something with this. I want to change it. I want to get rid of it. What's dependent on it? So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, this would be 100% done within ConvertKit, but we're not there. So this is, in my mind, the next best step. James asked you, write content for your sequences in ConvertKit or in a document. I tend to write them in ConvertKit, the actual email bodies, only because I've had nothing but issues with formatting and stuff from like a Google Doc into ConvertKit and so on. Okay, so Gabrielle asked a very good point about where cases where you would use tags. So what I would be doing here is is, I'm going to get to Joe and everyone else's questions in a second. So here's where I like tags. So let's say we want to have a way to track, is this person being pitched? I'm going to create a tag called, I usually call this internal, called currently being pitched. And then, and I would basically just set this, actually, you know what? I just changed my mind on this. I usually have historically used currently being pitched as a tag, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make this a field. So I want to track, is somebody being pitched? And if so, from where? So pitch status, I'm going to add this as a new thing. So I'm going to start in this doc, right? So I'm going to start over here. We're going to add a new thing, and I'm doing this. I just changed my, upgraded my thinking around this. So pitch status. So what we want to do is we want to track, is somebody currently being pitched in an automated way? The worst thing that can happen is for you to be doing like a live list-wide pitch and have that overlap with automated pitches. Because now somebody's getting double pitches for like different products and you're just overwhelming them and they're going to mark you as, you know, probably spammer or something like that. So like, you know, are they currently being pitched? If it's blank, we're going to say they're not being pitched. And if it has a value, this is what's pitching them, right? So what we're going to do with this here is I'm going to say I just added this pitch status field, and back in my automation that I just set up, I'm going to say here, so again, this is the first time I've done it for lock stuff, but I think this is going to work. I'm going to say before they get pitched, I'm going to have an action that sets a custom field of pitch status. And remember, the value is going to be the thing that's setting it. So I'm going to just call this, this is the email course. So email course, and let me just link to that. So if it's email course, we know that the email course is currently in the process of pitching them on something, right? When that pitch is complete, then I want to do another action where I set the custom field of pitch status to be blank. And now they're eligible to be pitched again. So now I can go back here and I can create a new segment called pitch status blank. I'm going to have this map to the custom field of pitch status, has any value, and then choose none. So if they don't, if pitch status is blank, then they're eligible to be pitched. So if I want to do a live, like let's email the whole list, I would combine and say, give me everyone who's customer. Let me add the customer one now. So I'm going to say the customer status is has any value, same deal, none. So customer status blank, right? But then I go through and add the same thing for customer status trialing, customer status monthly customer, and so on. Then I can just do if I wanted to push out a campaign that's to everyone who is pitch status blank, I'm going to safely only email people who are not being pitched through some evergreen way. And I'd also target people whose customer status is blank or canceled, and try to get them to sign up again, right? So you can see, hopefully you can see how like I used to use pitch status as a tag where I'd have a tag that was locked, like locked. So you apply the lock tag and now they can't be pitched. When they're done being pitched, you remove that lock tag. I actually prefer it this way because now I can trace back what's pitching them. So let's say I did a Black Friday one, right? Live Black Friday launch, where I have other things that are in the mix that are kind of saying, hey, for this subscriber, no one else can pitch them right now. I've got them. And then once they're obviously done being pitched, you then blank it out. So really like, this is the kind of stuff where you want to be thinking through, like, it's a pretty shitty experience to have. And I've seen this happen like where you're on the receiving end of a live launch and then you're getting some evergreen pitch and it's not their fault, right? Like they don't legitimately know that you individually are being pitched on this through this automation. But this is a way to just make it so you're really delivering a better experience to people. Yeah. So like Robbie said, broadcast worthy. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. So, there's an interesting question from Brian. If this was a client, what would you charge to do this as a road mapping session? If you go to brendandunn.com, I actually do sell this as a road mapping session where I do this individually for people. And I charge $9,000 for that, but I don't do many of them. Is it possible to have a field that contains multiple statuses at the same time? Very good point. Very good question. And let me introduce you to something that I actually have been doing more of lately. So, Jason and I were talking earlier about many of many, right? Like many products that somebody's bought, and you could use tags for that, like purchased dash product A, purchased dash product B, and so on and so forth. The thing that I've kind of been trying to do better, I guess, is to have, like, let's say you've got a portfolio of products with different things. Like with Right Message, it's just we sell one product and it's a state machine thing. So like if it was a membership site, let's say you have a membership site, you'd probably want to have a dedicated custom field for membership site status, which is blank, meaning they're not a customer, trialing, canceled, active, whatever, for the reasons we've already talked about. But let's say you sell courses too alongside your membership site. Well, you could have a product list, and this just says what kind of products they've bought already. And what you could do here is you could just make it this kind of like a comma separated list. A blank means they've never bought anything, and then you could see like comma separate out, and you're going to need to use some liquid for this. Unfortunately, it's not as clean and not as easy as with tags, but you can say something like, let's say you've got double your freelancing rate, mastering ConvertKit, and Blueprint. Let's say they bought those three. If I ever wanted to ask, hey, email everyone who has bought 3 or more of my products, all I would need to do is do something like figure this out. Like if subscriber product list, and then I would basically, I need to set this as a field first. So what I would do is whenever this gets updated, I would have a thing that sets like purchase products to be that split on comma. So if this is weird liquid stuff, don't worry about it. I think it's length or size. I forgot which one. I think it's length. But basically, if I did this, this would spit out a number of the size. Thanks. This would be the number of things you bought. So I could call product list split by comma and then call size, and it would do that. If I want to find out the last thing they bought, last purchased product, all I would need to do is do subscriber product list split by comma again, and then last. That would give me the last thing they bought if I'm always pushing it to the end of this list. So, you can't, tags don't have temporal data. You can't query. I know they're building out this purchased API. It's a little limited at the moment, but there's no way to say like, how many things has this person bought, or what's the last thing they bought. I do think in the future, this will be possible, hopefully with the way they're improving the purchases API. But for right now, you can basically do that if you wanted to get to that point. So I wouldn't get too hung up on this. The easy way now is just to use tags, like purchased DYFR, purchased MCK, all that kind of stuff. But if you're the daring sort and want to track purchases as a custom field, you can do that. Let me show you something too. Like if you've done anything with Liquid, you've probably done something like this before. Tags contains purchased DYFR, right? And then if that's true, you can say, thanks for buying DYFR, right? This is what you would do if you wanted to use tags. Look at how similar this is if you use that comma separated list. So you'd say product list contains, thanks for buying. It's almost the same thing. And this actually to me makes more sense. You're basically saying, give me the list of the products and see, does it contain this? So, materially speaking, they're very similar, and you can do a lot with comma separated list versus tags. So I'm always trying to find ways of eliminating tags. You don't need to be as dogmatic as I am about this stuff, but I would love to get to the point one day of having a completely tagless database that is ridiculously segmented. And that's going to be that's the goal I'm working toward personally, to be honest. Okay. So let's talk now about offer funnels really quickly. So I want to show you something. All right. this is so what I'm doing here, so this is something that I'm doing within W Freelancing. So I am using what's called an offer funnel to drive what somebody should do next. So over here, we talked about how, or I should say up here, what we've done is we have, remember, think of the what and the why. What? I want you to learn this lesson that I just sent you over this email course. Why? Because since you're a e-commerce company, this is what this lesson will help you do, right? Or if you're pitching somebody, what? I want you to sign up for a trial. Why? Because as an e-commerce company, you want to do X, Y, and Z. So to take that a step further, eventually they're going to be out of this thing we set up over here, this L-BPS. And you need to think about, well, what happens with them when they've gone through this kind of like introductory thing to your list, right? They've gone through an evergreen email course. They've been pitched on something. You found out why they didn't buy if they didn't buy. So the next step is moving them to probably some sort of long-term nurturing sequence. And that can be live newsletters that you send out every week. It could be an evergreen newsletter, what I call a shadow newsletter, which is just a way to kind of front load your best content. So that way, when somebody goes through this series, they get your lesson bridge pitch survey emails, they go through them, and then they leave that, whether they buy or don't buy. Now they can be on something that's basically going to send them a bunch of really great content that allows you to kind of get off that hamster wheel. So you don't need to be thinking, God, I need to be emailing my list with a new article every week. Instead, you get to the point where I've seen people with like 52 week sequences, which is a year of, they can get a new subscriber today. They go through this initial onboarding thing. They get pitched, some buy, some don't buy. Then they get pushed into this long-term nurturing thing where now they're getting a weekly email that is very great content, evergreen content. Obviously, if you were doing a email list with COVID-19 updates, this wouldn't work. But if you've got a business model where a lot of your stuff is pretty evergreen, then you could just basically automate your newsletter. So you might be thinking like, why would you want to automate your newsletter? Well, if I just join your list, do I want to be thrown headfirst into this rushing torrent of whatever you happen to be sending today? Probably not. I want to be getting a really nice curated list of content that is appropriate to me. And this is where kind of the segmentation work we've been doing can fall into place, because you could potentially say, if they are an e-commerce company, send these emails. And I'll show you how to do that in a second with the ConvertKit sequences. If they're a retail company, or not retail, consulting company, maybe send these emails. Or personalize how we send the same email and so on. But basically, if you can have a long-term nurturing sequence, you can compound that with an offer funnel. So, so evergreen, I'm sorry, jargon. Basically just, like what everyone's saying, it doesn't really go out of date. So what I like about offer funnels are I can go and I can set as a custom field on each person's record what they should do next. So mine for W Freelancing at the moment, I've been in the process of redoing this, but I've been pretty heads down with Right Message, so I haven't had a chance. But basically, I have a very basic one. I've created more complex ones in the past, but basically right now what I'm doing is when somebody buys something. So if I'm using, these are flag tags, by the way, up here. So remember, ConvertKit doesn't have the concept of events. So there's no way for me to dump everyone on my list into a recalculate their offer automation easily. So I use a tag that's just an ephemeral one-off tag that this gets added, immediately gets removed. So I use this as a way, you apply this tag, it runs something, and then it removes that tag immediately. But what I'm doing here is I'm setting a next offer on their record, which allows me to always point to what they should buy next for me. And beyond that, I also go and I create an offered products. So remember that list of product list thing of things people have bought. I also track offered products, which is basically the inverse. So of all the products I have, subtract out what they've bought. So that way I can say, hey, show me everyone whose offered products includes, W freelancing rate, DYFR. And what's nice about this is, I haven't done this yet, collar shoes situation, but I want to get this more advanced. So if somebody comes in through the mastering ConvertKit angle and isn't a consultant, isn't a freelancer, doesn't care about any of that stuff, their offered products would only be mastering ConvertKit. Whereas somebody who came in through the freelancer ingress points, and they might want to check out mastering ConvertKit because they've maybe segmented themselves as somebody who wants to advance their skills and go beyond just being a designer or go beyond just being a programmer and become a little more valuable to the market. Well, their offered products list might contain mastering ConvertKit. So I really like this idea of centrally managing through an automation. So this is an automation in ConvertKit. This automation doesn't send any emails. There are no sequences in this. All it's doing is it's looking at subscriber data and setting new data. So this is really powerful because all I need to do is I've got this. Whenever somebody joins my list, they get thrown into this. When they buy something new, they get thrown into this. It recomputes, recalculates what they should be offered next. And then what I'm doing with my newsletter is the PS at the bottom of it is pretty dumb. It's literally just saying, if the next offer is double your freelancing rate, show a call out for, and then when they go back to my site, let me show you how I'm doing this real quick in Write Message. When they go back to my site, what I'm doing here, so let me make this bigger and hopefully this won't get too crazy looking. I'm saying here, if somebody is on my site and they are not anonymous, so they're going to go down this no path, meaning they're on my email list, I've got a random number split between 1 or 2. Because what I want to do is I don't always want to be pitching the next thing they should buy. I want to kind of diversify and mix it up a bit. So I'm doing a random number thing. Then I'm looking at the next offer. If it's double your freelancing rate, I'm going to be pitching them on my site this ad, right? If the next thing that they should buy is the blueprint, this is the ad they're going to see. So what's really cool about this is I just need to think centrally, how do I compute who should get what next? And then this gets sent, in this case to Write Message, it gets sent to my newsletter. And all I need to do is just say, look, I don't know how it should be mastering ConvertKit or double your freelancing rate or blueprint or whatever. I just know it is. So that's what I'm going to tell them to do next. And that has been my #1 kind of point of optimization here with this email list, is that I can get all new subscribers coming in, going through this L-BPS sequence, getting intentionally pitched within about 14 to 21 days, depending on how active they are. And then they get pitched on a thing. About 6% of them now are converting immediately out of the gate, which means I now have a value of a subscriber within 30 days. I know if you join my list within 30 days, your value is probably X. Then I have a longer term value, which is obviously, 94% don't buy, but then, over the span of months and potentially years, I mean, I've been doing this email thing for 9 years now for this list. There will be more purchasing potential, right? So what's really cool is I put people through this intentional onboarding, and then they go through this evergreen email series where the call to action in these emails is dynamically generated. And it's based off that next offer. And that's been so effective because if I write a new article today, I write it, I publish it on my site, I dump it, the little preview thing into ConvertKit, the little 2-3 paragraph intro link to it. All I need to do is just make sure that the email template is my shadow newsletter template. It will put under my name a PS that is tied specifically to the subscriber getting that. And if they read that article and click on that article and go to my site, all the calls to action on the site are not opt-in forms. Instead, they're saying, hey, why don't you buy the blueprint? Here's why. Here's a testimonial or something. No, that's very intentional because I know they're not a subscriber, or they are a subscriber. They haven't bought the blueprint because you can't get next offer set to blueprint if they've already bought that. And it's all on autopilot. So let's say they buy and then a week later they get my next newsletter. They're not getting pitched on the blueprint anymore. They're automatically now getting pitched on the next thing. So it's such if you've got any sort of portfolio-based product business, it is such a huge thing to just be in the position where I'm going to write a new great article, hopefully great article, send it to my list, dump it in my shadow newsletter, and then everything else just works. People are getting pitched on what they should do next. it's all 100% on autopilot. It took some work getting it set up, but I think that's been, I mean, I know for a fact, I don't think, that's what sustained me while I didn't take any pay on Right Message and worked on that full time. It's been hugely powerful. Oh, the GDPR question. Ask that at the end if you don't mind, Luke. Okay, cool. So let me, cool. I'm glad you guys like this so far. So we've talked offer. Let me get my just notes real quick. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions too. So we've talked about how to technically segment. We talked, tags versus fields. I've kind of assaulted that. I'm not going to get too deep into behavioral segmentation because that gets a little more complicated and you can't do it 100% with ConvertKit. What I would recommend you do if you want to go 100% ConvertKit or 100% whatever it is, and you don't use something like Right Message or whatever else, is use link triggers. I'm not going to teach link triggers right now just because it's pretty easy to do and they have articles on their site on how to do it. But what you want to do is, instead of having the link trigger add a tag, and well, actually, I'm going to show you an example of this because this can throw potentially you off. Say I want to email my list and, hey, what size is your company? And then I've got just me, 1 to 5, or probably 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus, right? So let's say you want to survey people over email, right? Each of these would need to be a link, but the problem is, this is just, remember how I mentioned ConvertKit's very biased towards tags. It's only going to let you tag here. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to the automations tab, click on rules, create new rule. Say when they click a link, I'm going to call this, and my format here is TL, so trigger link. They technically call it link trigger, but I call it trigger links because that's what Trigger called it and still stuck in my head. So link trigger link, whatever. And then all we're doing here is we're matching this to, remember how when we are on our subscriber dashboard and we have these saved segments we stored, we could say here, business size equals solo. If you want a URL to push people to, I'd recommend on your site, you just push them to like a thank you page. I've got a bunch of these that are just like a thanks. ConvertKit does include, I don't know if someone wants to Google for this and pull the link, but ConvertKit has like a standalone thank you page you can use, but it's going to promote ConvertKit to anyone who clicks that. So it's up to you if you want to use it. But basically, links need to go somewhere. So, this is what I call it. So the trigger link, what it's setting the business size, and then the value solo. And then we're going to have set custom field to be, I know we don't have business size created, but pretend this was business size, and then I do solo. So once you get that, now we can go back here. I can reload this email, highlight the just me, add a link, and there's my link trigger for TL business size solo. And then you just need to go through the list. But then you can reuse these link triggers again and again, which is nice. Cool. All right. So one thing I'd recommend you do too. So this is a kind of a really another thing that's been really effective for me. And this is going to be a profiling series or I'm going to call this my onboarding profiling series. So what we're going to do here is, remember how we're tracking all these different things. We've got, what are the things like business type, and let's say we have another thing called like, I don't know, let's say we have one called ESP, right? So I'm not going to, I'll just do this real quick. Okay, so ESP, email service provider. So what email service provider they use, blank, they haven't told me, unknown. Otherwise, it's like ConvertKit, Drip, Infusionsoft, go down the list, right? What you can do is you could have something that whenever somebody joins your email list, regardless of how they join it, have an email that goes out once a week on I do mine Sunday night, and you might have seen these emails from me that are basically saying something like, could you tell me a bit about your business, right? And then, hey, I'd love to know more about your business. Actually, instead of typing this, let me just show you mine. This will be easier. If you go to sequences, what do I call it? Profiling. Oh, here it is. So I just send out this email that what I'm doing is I'm saying on, and I only have 2 of these loaded in. I do want to fill this out more, but what's really nice about this is these emails, I'm using ConvertKit's filtering to exclude people if the DYF need is set. So what's cool about this is every Sunday night like clockwork, when somebody joins my list, right now there's a maximum of 2. But if I had 10 different things I want answers to, and some people give me all 10 when they opt in, great for them, cool. They'll never get these emails. But if somebody gets in with telling me no data, maybe they get to that thank you page but never actually answered the questions, I can send these emails out automatically every Sunday night that they don't get this email if they've already been segmented. So they again did it on the thank you page through right message. But then here's another touch point where I can get this data. So this is just this, they ignored the thank you page. Now next Sunday, in their inbox pops in hey, I'd love to learn a bit more about you so I can send you more relevant content. What does best describe so I can help you most? Click one. And these are just link triggers, right? That are setting DYF need to first client in this case. So this is another thing that you can be doing and you should be doing to compound any sort of on-site or form-based segmentation that you're doing. Is I call this just a progressive profiling sequence. And what it's doing is it's just a stock list of emails that are conditional that are asking people to gradually fill in the blanks. And you want to always show people why you want this data. In this case, I want to send you more relevant content. If I know where you're stuck, I can give you better content. And then what's nice is since this all gets updated behind the scenes, well, let's say they chose, I want help getting my first client. Well, I've got a product for that. So I could say with my offer funnel, when the DYF need, which is the name of this field, when that changes, rerun the offer funnel. So maybe before they click this link, they're getting pitched on the not that they would, but let's say they were getting pitched on the build your great agency course. They need their first client. That's inappropriate for them. So now they get this email, they click, I need help getting my first client. And now that offer funnel reruns, and now future email newsletters and on-site ads are pushing the get your first client course or something like that. This is why segmentation is at the heart of everything we've been talking about, because it allows me to make it so I am effectively increasing the signal to noise ratio, or is it decreasing? Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it so as somebody is on my list over time, the content they're getting from me is more specific, more appropriate. I do things like I have glossary automations, which allow me to compute out how somebody should be described. So if I have, let me actually show you how I do that. Here's again, don't worry about how massive and crazy this is. But what I'm doing here is I'm saying, when I find out their business type or their team size, if any of these change, or if they become a new subscriber, this thing runs. And this even, you can see this breaks the ConvertKit navigation. It's so big. But what I'm doing here is I'm setting 2 custom fields, ident singular and ident plural, on their record. And these are user-facing segments. So, the internal field of business type, I would never spit out to somebody, your team size equals NA, meaning you haven't started a business yet, and your business type equals design. No, instead what I would do is I'd say, hey, you're a freelance developer, or you are a content agency, or a marketing agency, or a consultancy. Programmers call themselves consultancies. They don't call themselves agencies. So what I'm doing here is this runs automatically. This is just an automation that just sets stuff. And whenever that underlying segment data changes, so if I find out today you're a designer, I'm going to call you a freelance designer. But then you get an email from me on Sunday night that says, hey, I'd love to know, how you told me you're a designer. Awesome, thanks. Have you started freelancing? Or are you already doing it? Maybe did you start an agency, or have you scaled into an agency? Now they click they're an agency. This is going to rerun. And now from here on out, now they're going to get called somewhere over here, where is it? Design agency. Yeah, that would get called a design agency. So all I need to do is when I send an email, let me do this real quick. Let's say this is an email that I want to send out to everyone about growing your business. The best way to grow your subscriber ident singular. This is going to spit out the best way to grow your content agency, the best way to grow your freelance development company. What I don't need to do a bunch of liquid if else stuff. All I've done is I've spit out data that I've computed internally through a function automation. And again, I know a lot of this stuff, you don't need to do this stuff overnight. I'm just trying to give you an idea. It's like a sampler platter of what's possible. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what is doable with a program like ConvertKit. And hopefully, we're getting to the end. I wanted to open the floor to questions soon. There's a lot more. I've only skimmed the surface of what's possible, but I'd encourage you to look through that document I shared of like my outline that I'm doing myself with Right Message, redoing our email marketing. But now I just want to turn it over to you all and make sure that I'm getting answering any questions that you have for me. Hopefully this has been helpful. I know it hasn't been, maybe a slideshow of slide deck would have been better. But hopefully this has been helpful. But I just want to make sure that this is, okay. Cool. Good. I'll answer quickly Joe's question because I think he asked before, but I didn't get a chance to answer it. So confused about L-BPS. Is that a structure we should be following the specific name of your offer? Yeah, L-BPS is just it's just really a way, if you think about it foundationally, all it is it's a way of saying, this is a track that people can go on where we are delivering them educational content over email. We're keeping ourselves in their inbox. So instead of giving them a PDF ebook, you're giving them an email course. It could be as long as you want. I've done 7 lesson, 9 lesson. I've seen shorter, longer. We're working with one guy now who's done like a 21 lesson email course. What it's called, that's just internal kind of insider speak. But basically the idea is educate somebody to the point of getting them problem and product aware or problem aware with the course. So, expect that most people don't know that they are missing out on anything and losing sales by not personalizing their content. Cool. Most marketers don't know that. Or if they know that, it's in a very big picture, vague way. So the lessons do that. The bridge is then to kind of make a closing argument for why this model, why this idea, why this new way of thinking is so much better than the alternative. And then saying, if you want to do it, it's 2 options. You can either go at it alone. Actually, there's 3 options. You can either go at it alone and try to figure this stuff out on your own, hire a coder in Right Message's case, and mastering ConvertKit. Have fun messing around with ConvertKit and breaking crap. Or, here's a shortcut, this course, this software, whatever. Third option is just keep doing what you're doing, which is kind of a bit of a cheeky way to tell somebody that like your way you're doing it now is probably obviously flawed, but have fun, keep doing that. So then the bridge is just, like I said, to sum all that up, the pitch is just an evergreen automated way of pitching somebody. You want to have some urgency. You want to have 3 ways to create urgency: or limited supply, discounting, or bundling. So, ideally you can obviously do a pitch without any urgency, but urgency tends to work better. And then the survey part, which we didn't get a chance to dig into, but hopefully it makes sense what it would do. It's basically a list of link triggers like we just showed here, where you're finding out why somebody didn't buy. Is it because it was too expensive? Timing's wrong. You don't have the time. You don't think that this can help you, or you don't trust me. Or maybe you did want to do it, but you missed the emails and now you want to do it. I actually have an article if you want to read it on, if you want to see what Mikhail did. So here's a email that dives deeper into the study of surveying afterward. So yeah, I would check that out. Cool. So yeah, the L-BPS, Joe, just to sum it up, is just really a model of, it's a very intentional track to get somebody toward a product, that is, an asset in itself. Okay. Cool. All right, so I'm going to get through questions. There's a bunch in here. I'm going to start with some of the ones that are in the chat at the top. If I'm also going to go through the ones in the formal Q&A. How do you test your automations so that you can make sure they work as expected? Okay, so there is something if you're, first off, is anyone from Mastering ConvertKit actually here? If you are, say hi. Just curious to see how many people. Cool, all right, so. All right, so why I mentioned that is, so who asked that? The person who just asked about, Cesar, yeah. So you're in Mastering ConvertKit. So how do you test, right? So you might remember me bringing up to the Mastering ConvertKit group that ConvertKit's engine that renders preview emails is different than the ones that actually send emails, which is a massive issue. Unfortunately, it only affects you if you're doing weird stuff with like liquid assignments of variables and stuff like that. However, I quickly realized that the preview, whether the send email preview, like send an email to yourself preview, or the browser preview is insufficient. So what I've done is I've created test automation or test sequences. So when you add somebody to your list, you can add them directly to a sequence. So I'll have a test sequence, which if I want to test out like I don't know. So I want to test out like my shadow newsletter stuff. That was really hard to build that whole dynamic PS thing. So I needed a way of testing that. So I actually created a test sequence that I just would add myself to. One thing you can do is if you use, I'll type it in the chat, like me test1@brennan.com. So emails need to be unique, but if you're using a tool like Gmail or Google Suite, you can make them dynamic, but still satisfy ConvertKit's uniqueness by doing something like me or whatever. Say your email is like mine, me@brennan.com. You can do me plus test1, me plus test2, me plus test3, so on and on, and just keep pushing yourself through it. So that's what I do. It can get very unwieldy. I will tell you that. Like one issue I do have fundamentally with how ConvertKit does things is they have no concept of one-off emails. So if you have sequences that have delays between emails, but then you have a parent automation that started those sequences and they have their own delays, it can be a little confusing sometimes to figure out, well, how long does it actually take for this email to truly go out? And especially when you have conditionals, it becomes even harder. So I try to map all that stuff out in that doc. So yeah, I try to map in my automation, and I'll share with you guys if you want to email later when I send the replay, the actual double your freelancing automation doc. I was starting blank today, but I'll share that with you just so you have an idea of how I do it. But yeah, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, it can be hard to test this stuff. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to go through now the 21 open questions in the Q&A. So am I using anything like ClickFunnels? I don't use ClickFunnels. I've heard horror stories about the ClickFunnels like product itself, quality-wise. I'm old school. I roll my own landing pages and sales pages, so I'm the wrong person to ask about that. But no, actually the first and really the only time I've ever used ConvertKit's landing page was for this event. I usually roll my own. I just didn't have the time to. And between you and me, one thing that bothered me was I emailed my list, the ConvertKit landing page, and it didn't pre-fill the email capture stuff, which I thought would have been nice. But they don't have the ability yet to have custom JavaScript on landing pages. I talked to Nathan and they're working on it, but otherwise I would have put a right message on the ConvertKit landing page and then had a right message pre-fill in the email field. But anyway, yeah, didn't get a chance to do that. So cool. All right. So Lanch asks, is it possible to create a rule that will remove subscribers based on their open rate? Okay. Interesting question. So auto pruning. You can't automatically remove subscribers. What you can do is you can segment them as undeliverable. So you know how we talked about that pitch custom field, which is like, are they able to get emails or be pitched? You can have the same thing of like, I think somebody actually mentioned that they have something like this where can they get emails at all? You could basically do something where by default, people are marked as email deliverable equals yes or true or whatever. But then you could do something like, and I've done this with Drip. I haven't done it with my mastering or my ConvertKit setup, I should say. Just yet. I've taught a lesson on it, but I haven't rolled it out for myself. But basically, in the course Mastering ConvertKit, I do talk about auto printing. But in the idea of in your onboarding, you look to see, are they engaging with your emails? You can't, unfortunately, treat email opens as events that you can do anything with in ConvertKit, but you can treat link clicks. So what I do is I look to see, are they actually engaging with stuff? If they're not, after 30 days, you segment them as such that they're undeliverable. And then I just, you go in manually every few weeks and say, find me everyone with this undeliverable stuff and just delete them out of your account. And just do it manually. It'd be nice to have it be automated, but there's no way yet in ConvertKit to do that. All right, so how do you decide what parameters to use in your segmentation? We get way more data from users than we need. Yeah, I mean, my big thing is I only capture stuff that I think I will actually need to use at some point, or stuff that I'm actually using right now. There's a third argument, which is, like, I track things like I'm not actually doing anything with where they came from. Did they come from Facebook or Twitter or whatever? I don't materially do anything different, but that is useful for reporting. ConvertKit can't really do great reporting just yet, but if, on my very long list of to-dos is to do what I did back with Drip, which was mirror into a tool like Mixpanel all my ConvertKit data so that I could run reports and say, show me everyone who came from Facebook and show me how they went through this email course, this L-BPS, and how they converted relative to people who came from Twitter, or break it down by industry. So how did designers convert in this email course versus developers? So yeah, I mean, I don't go overboard, but definitely you want to have, you want to collect as much data that you can work with the intent of having this data will help me give somebody a better experience or give me the info I need to ultimately deliver a better experience to them. All right, so Sebastian, so many possibilities with write message and ConvertKit. Don't know where to start to use all the options. Yeah, not to toot my own horn, but that's why I did Mastering ConvertKit. There are some stuff too on the write message side. If you go to the examples page, I'll put that in the chat, that give ideas on what you could do. But that's for write message, which is kind of out of scope from this talk. So it seems to be, Joanne says, it seems to be developer centric, so much functionality that gets in the way. Yeah, I mean, that's the issue. Unfortunately, the issue is that Liquid programming is a programming language, or not, it's not programming language, it's a templating language built by developers of Shopify that are meant to be used by people who understand like if else flows and Boolean logic and do that stuff all day, every day. ConvertKit is actually very good at not being too overly technical. I think it's probably right at the top or near the top for that. So I think the problem is if you do want to effectively personalize, you do need to be thinking in terms of, I do need to find ways of having conditional email content. I do need to show this case study blurb versus that case study blurb, which means you're going to need to have conditions, which when you have conditions, you're going to need to deal with Liquid. So I mean, it's unfortunately, like, I think it's worth your while to learn the basics, at least, of Liquid. If you go to my YouTube channel, I actually have an hour-long video that's actually from Mastering ConvertKit on Liquid. It's all about like what you can do with Liquid. Now it's good. It's more of a reference video, but it shows some examples of what's possible to be done with it too. But yeah, it is. I will agree that it does require personalizing right and thinking through like these kind of flow models does require. It requires, actually, funny enough, the same thought processes we all have when we have a conversation or we give a talk I'm giving a talk at a Conversion XL. I'm in a room full of marketers. I'm going to speak differently about this thing that I usually do than if I'm at MicroConf in front of a room of, marketers, but solo business people, right? So we all do this internally. So it's just a matter of like, I like Google Docs because it's not a programmer thing, but I'm just kind of mapping out like who should get what and when and why. So yeah. All right. So let me just get these. Ideally, how big should your subscriber list be? Good question. So how big should your list be before you do any of this stuff? I think you should be getting data ASAP. You don't need to necessarily act on it yet. So one thing like with Right Message, right? Like one thing I do here whenever I collect new segmentation is I probably, like this is a bad example because we haven't done much with Right Message yet, but I wouldn't worry about personalizing much for low percentage stuff like MailChimp or HubSpot. I focus on the big movers. So like if you've got a list and you're just building it out, collect the data so you can at least have it for the future and you can get these kind of stats. Even if you're doing through link triggers, you can just do a report and dump a spreadsheet and see how many people have need equals start versus need equals grow and kind of do it that way, or just look at your dashboard and do it that way there. But then you can start to see, wow, this is like a runaway, like 50% of people identify this way. So maybe then start to slowly introduce more personalized content for that cohort. But I don't think there's any minimum, especially with segmentation. I do think there's probably a minimum for doing much with personalization. Okay. Annie asks, I'm using ConvertKit. I'm mainly a B2C business pain relief specialist. Asking, yeah, so absolutely, yeah. I mean, the example I like to use is, let me actually show you a quick example, Annie, if you're still here, of one of the examples we have on Right Messages stuff. So even though it's not for pain relief, it's for a law firm. So if you think about law firms, oftentimes there are a lot of law firms can do a lot of stuff, right? And they do it, they do like divorces, they do criminal law, they do business stuff, they do all that, right? So like in your case, Ani, you could be doing something where, and again, I'm demoing here with the Right Message, but by all means, save some money, do it with link triggers and ConvertKit to start. So let's say somebody joins your list and you say, hey, what is the number one thing that you're struggling, like what hurts most? Is it neck, back? And I know some of these can overlap, but I'd say like, if you could fix one thing, would it be your neck or back or whatever else? So we're doing that kind of here, right? Like, so what are you looking for help with? I need help with criminal law. I need help right now. So let us help you today with criminal law. Whereas real estate law right now, let us help you today with real estate law. So it's basically like, I mean, I'm just substituting out words here. This is obviously for the point of opt-in stuff, but you can absolutely get this data, and you should, I think. It'll give you insights into your audience, but it'll also help you. Like if you have a new product that's for neck relief, it's as easy as just saying, target everyone who has neck issues, promoting this. Or maybe you want to promote it list-wide, but you start with people who are just have said neck stuff, and you get them to kind of pilot the new product or something. So hopefully that helps. Do you use third-party apps like, all right, so Zapier to organize email replies and responses in spreadsheets? No, I do that manually because Zapier's parsing stuff is very poor, I found. So I use Help Scout for all my email. So I just basically, I mean, I cheat. I have my VA to pull out the raw stuff for me, but then I manually bucket it all. Yeah, I just look for people like so if you wanted to start, let's say you want to start and you just email your entire list with a broadcast email that has that text I showed you before, you get the replies, and then you just start to slowly piecemeal that, put that into the spreadsheet stuff. So I do it manually. I haven't used it you could instead link people to like Typeform and do it that way. That's a little more structured. That works too. Okay, I talked to John about the tag stuff with Infusionsoft. How can a local business who uses email marketing to keep their list up to date begin with segmentation? I've been using Open and Click. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't think I talked about this, but once you've done that kind of, and I do have an article. That's what I like about creating content. Beginner's guide. So if you read this guide on beginning segmentation, so what I usually recommend, you're going to find the stuff I talked about with that like email you linked or you send out to your list, getting the raw data. Once you've got that though, your list onboarding, your lead capture, progressive profiling like we talked about, and even a one-off email to everyone saying, hey, thanks so much for your responses. We've got a little we've got tons of great feedback. And we've narrowed it down to like 3 core needs that people have. would you mind just clicking on the need that best resonates with you? And do that. And that works ridiculously well once you've got that, because you've shown people, hey, I've listened to what you've said. I know now where we need to be moving directionally. And here's what we're doing now as a result of that. So, all right, recording. Yep, got that. Can you update fields as you can with tags with link triggers? Yes. So Brad, I showed you how to do that. Can you back it and change? All right. So James has a good question about what if you have, like we talked about, where you have the same thing like e-commerce, but maybe some people randomly have a capitalized E because you set up right message incorrectly, but then you had the link trigger that did it this way, and right message did the capital and the link trigger did the lowercase. So it's important to have that doc first off. But if that is an issue, you can absolutely what I would do is I would do an automation that I'd use once that would basically, I'd push my subscribers to have that field set into it, and then just say like, does the value of that field equal e-commerce with a capital E? If it does, or I'd probably actually, if it's just capitalization, I would just call a liquid down case on it and do it that way and reset it. You could do it that way. You could dump everyone who matches, do it as a spreadsheet and then re-import it back into ConvertKit. There's a risk though that if the underlying data in ConvertKit changes and then your new CSV that you're importing overwrites that. So I'd probably do it through an automation. Yeah. So Tomas, do you send surveys to your list for additional information to use right message? I do. Yeah. So one pattern I like that I think works well, start with a link trigger. So you have a link trigger that links to a right message hosted survey. And so the first question they answer is done through the email. So like pick which one is you. What's your favorite color? Red, green, or blue? Red. That links them then to a hosted survey where the subsequent questions are answered. And as they answer those in real time, that data is sent up to ConvertKit. So even if they only answer 2 of the 5 questions you have on that follow-up survey, at least you have two more data points. And there's no like weird opt-in at the end. One thing I don't like about a lot of these quiz tools is they all force the opt-in, even if you are sending it to a list that you already have already opted in, obviously. And then they make you do like another opt-in, even if it's pre-filled at the end. Typeform does a good job at not doing that, but there's no direct Typeform integration with ConvertKit. So, all right. So, at what point would you suggest new business should start worrying about personalization? When you see measurable disparity between the different types of people through that dashboard I showed you. So when you see that there are like people who are starting out are very different than people who want to scale. So when you start to see that tangibly, now if 98% of your audience is saying they're just starting out, no point, or at least on that dimension or that type of segment. But I would start small. I would start by thinking about like, all right, so how do I, it could be as simple as like in our case, we capture your email service provider, ConvertKit, Drip, whatever. Just make it so when we email them, we just say, whenever you send an email through Drip, ConvertKit, whatever, that's a very simplistic way, but it's a start. And then you can do more nuanced things where you're actually reshaping the content later on. So handling transactional emails. So Tabitha, yeah, so sequences, unfortunately, can only send emails once. What's her name? Elizabeth something or other on the Facebook group has an article about like duplicating sequences again and again, and then having like logic that says if they've gone through it, send them to the cloned sequence. I don't like that though, because it's like having the same spreadsheet cloned a few times or doc or something. It doesn't, but I don't, yeah. So I'm hoping I've been strongly lobbying ConvertKit to allow for, and I think a lot of us have, to allow for at least an option to resend sequence emails. So can't do that yet. Why did I switch from Drip to ConvertKit? I have an article for that. Switching to, so I'm going to post this in there. So Anonymous, I have an article for that. Big thing on why I switched to ConvertKit was I like the team. It's helpful being able to text the CEO. That's another good thing too. But that's my privilege, I guess, from having known Nathan from before ConvertKit was a thing. I do like ActiveCampaign too. I really like them. I like Customer.io a lot. So there are other products I like. My minimums are I need solid templating. Unfortunately, ActiveCampaign's templating is horrible. I want Liquid. So like ConvertKit, Drip, Customer.io, I'll use Liquid for their templating. I want visual automations, which all three of those have. So yeah, I mean, I hopefully in that article I make a pretty compelling case for why I chose ConvertKit. Okay, so Robbie asked, got tags that are fairly organized. What's the best approach to migrate? Yeah, I mean, I would start small. I mean, the tags aren't failing you now, so I would say next time you're going to be doing something major under the hood, I'd use that as an opportunity to refactor. Just like, if you compare this to programming, which I know a lot of us here are developers, you wouldn't say, I'm going to reformat or refactor my entire code base for the sake of refactoring it. I mean, some people might, but I wouldn't, because that introduces risk, right? So I would start to slowly, I'd start to document if you haven't done that yet, and slowly start to think, well, maybe I am potentially running into some hot water with the thing I talked about with the trial canceled customer thing. That would be, I think, low-hanging fruit. And you need to document how are we getting data about who is a customer into ConvertKit and stuff like that. So yeah. Send in Blue. I've seen it, but I know nothing about it. So do you have best practices for refactoring an evergreen funnel to avoid people falling out of the funnel because a step gets removed? Yeah, I tend to not modify stuff that's already running with people in it already. I would just clone. I'd clone the old one, start from there, update what you want to update. And then when everyone is done with the existing one, delete that. And then I'd clone it, update it the way I want it, make sure anything that pushes people into that are now pushing people to the new thing. So you're going to have, unfortunately, 2 times people in the new automation and people in the old automation. So, but when the old one's all fleshed out, then just get rid of it. So I tend to not like big seismic things when people are kind of in these limbo delay periods and stuff. So, okay, I talked about testing automations already. Would you be combining? Oh, yeah. So Vladimir asks about combining ConvertKit with the CRM. Yeah, I mean, so I've done this before. I helped somebody a while back who they were using Drip, but Drip with close.io. We were using Zapier to make it so whenever and it was actually really cool because what we did was, when certain field changes were made, they'd get synced between the two, right? So for example, let's say somebody books a demo request. So they sold software. Somebody books a demo request. Drip would send a bunch of emails that would be based on, it was flexible, meaning depending on how far out their demo was booked, if it was booked out a week, they'd get a bunch more emails than if it was booked out for tomorrow. So depending on how big the gap is between right now and their demo, they get different amounts and volumes of email. But then what we did is after the demo, so they'd be using Close.io to manage phone calls and one-to-one salesperson to them email communication. But then all they had to do after the demo, let's say somebody wasn't a good fit, or they need to ask their team or ask their, get the team to buy in or something like that. In Close, they would just choose good fit dash needs to think about it. Then that would phone over to Drip and then put them on a long-term nurturing sequence that would be focused on keeping the product and the idea of the product front and center. If it was a needs to get buy-in from the team, it would have Drip deliver a PDF automatically that they could share around the office, right? If it was a bad fit, too expensive, you better believe we set it up so they would get a long-term nurturing sequence, but front-loaded onto that were emails about the value of the product and how, case study stuff, right? So you can absolutely have interplay between a proper CRM and something like Drip or ConvertKit. Yeah, you can have, Brian asks, can you use the product list custom field for condition branching in automation? Absolutely, because you can now check to see if the value of a field contains. What you want to make sure is, let's say you have a product called DYFR and one called DYFR-A. If you say, does it contain DYFR? Both of those will be true. So you just want to make sure that you've got unique enough product SKU type things that you're not going to have any conflicts that way. Should I start with building a funnel map, a user avatar list, or a website with the right message? I'd start with probably email list first. I mean, there are people much more qualified than me on how to start a list from scratch, again, an audience from scratch. Brian Harris teaches a lot on this, and he has good stuff on this. Basically, I would just try to build up the list first. I wouldn't even worry about personalization. I do segmentation stuff, but when you've got like 10 people on your list, your segmentation should be, hey, I just saw you join my list, because they're the only one who joined that week. You don't tell them that though. But like, would you be open to jumping on a quick Zoom call? I'd love to find out a bit about like what you're hoping to get from me, and use that as an opportunity to get some really strong back and forth. Don't try to automate and do all this big stuff too early on. This is a way to make it so I can still do that, some pseudo semblance of that one-on-one Skype call I used to do back when I started W freelancing to random people who join my list. This is my way of kind of meeting in the middle between that one-on-one high touch, hey, Sebastian, tell me a bit about your business. What are you looking for? Oh, let me tell you about what I've done content-wise, blah, 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 blah. And the one size fits all, blasting out the same crap to everyone. This is a way to meet in the middle. It's never going to be as good as actually talking live with Sebastian over the phone. He's going to get much more valuable input for me if I could talk to him individually, but that isn't feasible as businesses grow. So, can you track email opens to counter? No, I wish. So yeah, what you want to do instead, I'm really hoping they add more flexibility to this stuff, but what I used to do back with Drip was whenever a automated newsletter would go out, it would increment a score. And then when that score hit above a certain threshold, it would queue them up for an evergreen pitch based on their next offer, their offer funnel. It would go through that, take them out of the newsletter, the shadow newsletter, go through the pitch, then push them back into the shadow newsletter. With ConvertKit, because it's sent via a sequence, which you can't have logic that runs when a sequence email is sent. So what I instead do is just simplistic. It's just a delay timer of 90 days. So that's the next best thing. So yeah. How do you deal with customer clicking on multiple links? Yeah. So the last one is what gets set. What you want to do on your thank you page, Mario, is you want to have something that says, ideally you pass along as a query param the thing that you just set it to, like, hey, thanks for, awesome. I've got you down as you're looking to start a business. Thanks. You can use personalization software like RightMessage to make it so you don't need 50 landing pages. You just have a single page that does that. But what you could do with that is you could put on that page also, like, if this is incorrect, just go back to that email and click the one that's correct. What you can do too, just because I've seen this in practice a few times, if you have it so they click a link trigger and then a specific email sequence will go out immediately after that, have a delay of like 5 minutes before you check to see the value. So that way if they click the wrong one, rather than immediately dispatching the next thing, instead have it be a click one, wait 5 minutes, and then check to see, based on their value, what is it? If it's still software, if it's still starting a business, then send that relevant sequence. Because otherwise, if you just say when one of these gets set, then immediately send the email sequence, you might run the risk of somebody click the wrong one. And even though you tell them they can change it, they go to change it, but it's too late. They're already in the sequence. So that having a 5 minute delay often works for that too. Okay. So best practice for growing an email list from scratch. Brian, I've not done that in a while. So like I said, I'm not an authority on that. I know Brian Harris has some good stuff. I think the team at Copyblogger just did a webinar on doing that. It usually boils down to like email and DM friends and say, hey, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested? And see if they buy into that. That's literally Brian Harris's course he used to do, was basically getting your first 100 subscribers by doing exactly that. Going like day one and throwing a right message opt-in form on a blog that gets no traffic is not going to magically change anything for you. So, Any tools besides ConvertKit you'd like to share with us? Yeah, I mean, well, Carlos, do you mean like email marketing software or just other software? I mean, my stack is, I use Typeform for open-ended stuff. Hopefully we'll get right message to the point where we can do open-ended soon. So open-ended surveys, I use Typeform. I use Zapier to get, to handle usually Typeform stuff. Write message for discrete, one of many segmentation, and then ConvertKit and WordPress. That's pretty much my stack. That's pretty straightforward. What tool are you using to create flowcharts? Pen and paper. Yeah, I mean, I will, my flowcharts, honestly, Sherry, are just outlines. But if I need to visually draw something, I'll draw it. But I feel actually more comfortable because my handwriting's crap. I feel more comfortable with just going into like a Google Doc and bullet point outlining and using indents. Like I'll do something like, what I'll often do is something like, you know, if color equals red, oh, these aren't bullets. So I'll do something like this, send email, else color equals green, send other email, else do other thing. So this is my, I find this easier, honestly, than drawing the equivalent of that. So what's the best practice for testing your automations before activating them? Yeah, I mean, that's also like I think I mentioned earlier. There's no real way outside of maybe putting yourself, especially if you've got delay timers. If it's all pretty quick, that's easy. But if you got delay timers, you can put yourself through it. You can also, if you compartmentalize and you have different sub automations that are triggered by a parent automation, you can dump yourself directly into one like that. So yeah, that there's really no easy way outside of that. All right. So once you set up a link trigger, does it delay that action every time the URL is used in ConvertKit? Yeah. So it will set that custom field, even if you sent that email 3 months ago. If that link trigger still exists in your ConvertKit rules, that custom field will get updated if they go back and find that email. So that is something to keep in mind. Yeah. So it doesn't expire unless you delete the actual. I don't actually know what would happen if you deleted the rule in ConvertKit, and that rule, I guess it would send you onto the thank you page, but just none of the actions would fire. So best practice for moving a nurture sequence subscriber to customer sequence after they buy. Yeah, good question. Okay, so when they buy, I actually covered that in Mastering ConvertKit. I have an hour-long lesson on that, but let me try to quickly sum that up. So basically, this is something I think people fall short on, is you buy a product and then you just kind of leave them cold. So by having some sort of post-purchase automation, or again, it could be as simple as fire the sequence when the product list now contains MCK for Mastering ConvertKit, or purchased-MCK, whatever you happen to use. And then basically what I think from a functional point of view is, so what I do in the Mastering ConvertKit follow-up sequence is I drill further, and hopefully some of the people who've gotten that can maybe chime into what they liked or didn't like about it. But my goal is just to kind of follow up with like walking through module by module, the whole thing. And then I try to add additional insights and different things. And I try to get people to, it doesn't always work as well as I hope it would, but try to get people out of the email, out of this accountability email, into the course Facebook group, and to post something. Like I'll ask them point blank, like, what do you think your segmentation strategy should be? Or once you've come up with your basic segmentation strategy, share the Google Doc in here or something. So, that's just a way to kind of automatically get people who are going through this accountability sequence to go back and share it with the group, with the other people who are going through the same thing. And that's good. It injects kind of like fresh blood into the community group. And I really like that as a model. I think it's good too, because it gets people. A lot of people are sold on the sales page, but they don't actually. They're sold on the sales page, but they think that they're doing something by buying the product, but they actually only succeed when they execute on it, right? So as a course creator, I want people to use my thing so that I get more case study data of like this person who has now an amazing business. So like a bunch of sales is nice from a revenue perspective, but I want success stories too. So yeah, I don't want to dive too much into stuff, but I do outline in the course. I'm not using this as a way to pitch the course, but I do outline the exact flow that I use as a hour-long lesson. So Anonymous asks, am I opening the course? It actually never shut. So yeah, Mastering ConvertKit is open. We still got a few sales a week on autopilot. So yeah, it's open. Do I track newsletter referrals? Yeah, so there's a great tool by Lewis called, not Viral Loops, what is it? Spark Loop or something, that I did a demo call with him about it. And it's basically a way to make it so if you have like a share button on your thank you page, when people opt in or just in your email list, you can then accredit, or you can then track that this subscriber came from subscriber Brennan or something, right? Like, and you can have all that data. I want to do it. I just don't know what I do with it yet. What kind of incentive program, or if any, that I do. But yeah, I don't track who referred what, but I do track original landing page. I do track original source. So Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. I do track certain articles that send me traffic. All that stuff gets associated with their ConvertKit record. But I don't track like proper affiliate stuff that way. I do for product sales, but not for newsletter stuff. Okay, so I've gone through all my questions and I've gone 2 hours and 21 minutes. So hopefully, thanks to the 72 of you who are still here, thank you. I really hope this has been helpful. Again, I didn't really have an agenda outside of just wanting to kind of share stuff that I've been wanting to kind of share with people for a while. Hopefully this has been helpful. Yeah, so if anyone has any feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. Definitely send me an email, brendan@wfreelancing.com. Thank you. Thanks, Carlos. That's really nice. So send me an email. If you like these and you want more of these, I'm going to be doing, I think I mentioned to you in one of the automated emails that you got for this, might do more advanced kind of things where it's more, I would consider this pretty high level. But more like live things that I teach in the course. So even if you're not in the course, if you like, I'm thinking of doing one where it's the whole L-BPS, but like $100 thing. Not really, I don't really know if I'll do it. So if you think I should, let me know over email. You don't need to let me know now. But I like doing this stuff. I think email automation is one of these things that when done right, it's better for people. It's better for the people, your subscribers, because instead of everything being on your timeline and your whatever, you're allowed to, over time, make it so people are getting really great stuff that aligns with what they need next. So yeah, cool. All right. So I'm going to go have a drink. And I think it's that time of the day now. And, but again, thank you all so much for coming by. Definitely shoot me an email. I'll put my, usually Carrie, I'm going to do subject, from workshop. Put this, if you don't mind. If you do send me an email, put from workshop. Otherwise, it'll go to Carrie, and she's dealing with stuff like people who lost access to their courses and stuff. So just put that, and I'll look at it. But yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming out, and thanks so much. And if you need and if you do sign up for ConvertKit, one way of paying me back is use my affiliate link, and that's just double your freelance. I should be better. I'm a really crappy affiliate. So if you do sign up, feel free to use that. But thanks again. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.